Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the EOB podcast. So we have Solo, a Star Wars story opening last weekend, which is Memorial Day weekend, a 4-day weekend. Let's see how that movie did at the box office. So before we get to that, let's talk about my projections for the movie. I thought the movie could open somewhere above 200 million plus, because I said, this movie is about Han Solo. He is a very beloved character in the Star Wars universe, probably more beloved than Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia. He is like the spice in the movie, at least in the original trilogy, right? A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, etc. So I thought, Solo, a movie that's about this character in his younger days before he met up with Luke Skywalker and start off as Avenger going against the Republic, Darth Vader, etc. Right? I thought this movie could do well, because the previous movies, the previous spin-off, Rogue One, opened to 155 million and gross 532 million domestic and over 1 billion worldwide. So I thought, Solo, based on this character, could do better than this, because he is Han Solo. With the Millennium Falcon, with Chewie, Chewbacca. So I thought, why not 200 million? But the thing I didn't take into account, and I wasn't cognizant of, is that this movie is released on Memorial Day weekend, arguably kind of like pretty much one of the weakest weekends you could release a movie on. So why Disney? Why would you release a Star Wars movie on Memorial Day weekend? Maybe they are like me, that they are not cognizant of the fact that this Memorial Day weekend is not a good weekend to release one of your flagpoles, one of your top movies on this weekend. But they did. I mean, for comparison, let's go back to 2017, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which was the latest, or probably the last Pirates movie, opened to 63 million 3 days. That's like a big franchise, huge franchise for Johnny Depp. But we've seen a decline, but 63 million opening, and it's not great for a movie that costs 100 million plus to make, right? And in 2016, X-Men Apocalypse only did 66 million 3 days. Not great number for, again, your big flagpole superhero movie. And then Alex Looking Glass in 2016 on Memorial Day weekend as well, 27 million 3 days. Again, that is a sequel to Alice in Wonderland, another Johnny Depp movie, which made 100 million domestically. But it didn't do that as well the second time around, because it took so long for the sequel, and I guess nobody asked for an Alice in Wonderland sequel. And going back further, right, 2015, Tomorrowland, 33 million opening for 3 days, and so it is not a good weekend to open your blockbuster, your big movies, because for some reason, I guess people are traveling or having their barbecues together. It's a gathering for people, just to eat food, travel or whatever, hiking in the mountains. But movie watching is kind of low on people's things to do. So maybe that's why Solo, a Star Wars story, only managed to pull in 84 million or 85 million in 3 days. 4 days, it is 103 million. So it is the lowest opening in the post George Lucas Star Wars movies, and it is kind of comparable. The opening is kind of comparable to Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones opened to 80 million and went on to make 310 domestic, and 649 million worldwide. And speaking of worldwide, overseas, it's not looking great for the movie as well, because it only managed to pull in about I believe 10 million in China, and others as well. Let's see, according to Box Office Mojo, it only did like UK 10 million, China 10 million, Australia 5 million, Germany 4 million, France about 4 million as well, Russia 3.6 million, Spain 2.6. So the opening day figures for those movies overseas in the bigger markets are not great. So it could be, it's not just Memorial Day weekend, it is worldwide as well, because normally, even though the movies, a movie won't open that well here, it's huge overseas, especially for movies that takes place in this, Star Wars universe. And for it to open not great overseas, only about 65 million overseas cumulative so far. Not good. And it's probably gonna end up as probably the lowest, probably. It depends on the second weekend, right? Well, we have Memorial Day weekend to count on here, so we know that domestically it might be the lowest grossing, we know that already, post George Lucas Star Wars movie, and it might even be lower than the new ones, the second trilogy, which is Attack of the Clones. That one did 302 million domestic, 80 million opening, 302 million domestic. We'll see if Solo: A Star Wars Story can beat the lowest grossing movie in the second trilogy, which is Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones. And reviews wise, it's the lowest in the post George Lucas Star Wars movie as well, at 70%, last I checked on Rotten Tomatoes, and a minus cinema scores. Usually supposedly the cinema scores for these Star Wars movies are usually an A, because they're fans of the movie would go out and gush about the movie, right? But this one is disappointing. So critics didn't like it very much, even though it has a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. Usually the reviews for the Star Wars movies tend to edge up in the 90s, but this one is actually quite low. So it could be the change in director, right? Ron Howard directed this one. Originally it was I think the comedic duo from Parks and Recreations, I believe, or one of the comedy shows, and then they switched them out and installed Ron Howard. So it could be that, or it could be the effect from the mainline, the previous Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi. Even though the reviews were great at the time, but the response from fans of the movies weren't. People thought that it was kind of like a long chase. It wasn't that grand of a story, and people, I think, were generally disappointed. Even though the critics, I think it was like over 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Could be that. It could be that, or it could be the Memorial Day weekend. But hey, how do you explain the overseas figures, right? Or it could be there is a Star Wars fatigue. There's like a Star Wars movie every winter, every Christmas, and now they're having Star Wars movies every summer as well. So you're getting a Star Wars movie every 6 months, and can the market or the fans are they getting a Star Wars overload? Fans are getting Star Wars overload. That they're getting Solo, they're getting Boba Fett to be coming, right? And and then there's also the mainline Star Wars as well, and they killed off. Spoiler alert: they killed off, or maybe they didn't, right? Mark Hamill's, Luke Skywalker, in the last movie, the Last Jedi. Maybe he'll make a comeback. And they killed off Harrison Ford, and of course, Princess Leia, she died of natural causes. So we, the original people, the original actors and the roles, they're killing them off one by one. We'll have to see how they do Princess Leia in the subsequent movies, because she has a outsized role still. They're putting her as the face of the resistance, but she passed away, and we don't know, obviously they'll either they'll resurrect her character through CGI, or they just have her hand off the leadership duties to one of the other characters. And I think they're going that way because, hey, you don't want to kind of keep her alive with computer CGI technology. So it could be a sense of Star Wars overload. I feel too much Star Wars. They're milking it too much. I mean, even though we have like superhero movies all the time pretty much, but they're about different characters, different stories to tell. And this one, fans might be on to them and say, Star Wars is bigger, idea wise, than what they're seeing, what these stories are seeing. A couple might be good, but one every 6 months might be too much, and we might be beginning to see the fatigue there. Who knows? It could linger in theaters and outperform, but I doubt it. Let's move on to the new releases. We have 3 wide releases. We have Upgrade, a kind of action movie by Leigh Whannell. He produces and wrote some of the Saw and Insidious movies, and he made his directorial debut with Insidious Chapter 3. This is his second movie directing. Takes place in a futuristic world. We'll get to that. And the other movie is Action Point, a Johnny Knoxville R-rated comedy. And then Adrift is based on a true story starring Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin. All right, how about we start off with Upgrade? As we said, it's directed by Leigh Whannell, who wrote and directed this movie. It takes place in a futuristic world. Stars who does it stars? And it stars Logan Marshall Green as Gray Trace. He's married, but event happened that his wife got killed. He became a quadriplegic, and then a guy came to him and say, hey, we have this chip, would you like to test it? And this chip implanted in him turned him into this fighting machine, this killing machine, right? As a computer, it talks to him, communicates with him. So when he allows the chip to take over, like I said, he became this killing machine, and has all these action moves. So he's getting revenge for his wife. And directed by Whannell, right? I mean, he cut his teeth on the horror movies, right? With directing and writing, and now he wrote this movie as an actioner and as an action movie. So you can say that it's not one of his he's kind of sort of out of his elements right there. It doesn't mean that he couldn't direct action. You could say that based on his name, people might not associate Upgrade to an action movie, right? If they market this movie as by the director of Insidious Chapter 3, and this is a horror movie, hey, they might turn out for this one, because if they like that one, they might turn out for this one. But this is an action movie, as I said, and they might not associate the two, because horror fans might not necessarily like the action element in this movie. But it's at the reviews right now currently on Rotten Tomatoes is 80%, which is pretty good, surprisingly, for an action movie. That's directed by Whannell. So I think this could probably pull in or open to 10 to 15 million this weekend. But we'll see, since we still have Solo, we still have the Avengers movie, we still have Deadpool, but will people go for this movie from a director that's more known for the horror movies and doesn't have a big draw in Logan Marshall Green? So we'll see. We'll come out, but I would say this movie could open to about 10 to 15 million. All right, let's move on to Action Point, Johnny Knoxville R-rated comedy, also starring Bridget Lundy Payne. So this movie is about Knoxville, who is telling his grandkid about the time that he way back when, where he used to run an amusement park, a failing amusement park, because there's a competing park nearby that's taking care, that's taking all his business, and of course he's trying to renovate, trying to innovate his park. And of course, this being a Johnny Knoxville comedy, it is about people doing dumb things. And as such, there is an audience for his comedies, judging by his Jackass movies, and Bad Grandpa, right, opened to 32 million and went on to make 102 million domestic. So don't underestimate dumb comedies. This is one of them, for slapstick humor, punches to the crotch, etc. People being tossed into walls, people falling down, breaking things. So it's one of those comedies, and it seems like there's an audience for this one. If his previous comedies or a guide, then this movie could open in the 20 to 25 million range. So that's what I'll go with. All right. Let's move on to Adrift, our final big release, wide release this weekend. A drama thriller starring Shailene Woodley, Sam Claflin, based on a true story about a couple who set sail from Tahiti to San Diego, and has to cross a wide swath of the ocean, in a sailboat. So bad idea, right? Because they encounter a hurricane, and things happen, and she is stranded, and they are stranded in the middle of the ocean with no help, right? And they have to figure out ways to survive. So it became, a smooth sailing trip. It turned into the life of Pi, pretty much, except there's no tigers or no animals in this movie. And Shailene Woodley, you might know her from the Divergent series, and Fault in Our Stars and The Descendants, right? And outside of those movies, her movies don't usually don't put in the numbers, and the Divergent series didn't close out, didn't have the final movie, and that one is up in the air. So as a draw, I don't think, and I still hammer the point, she's not there as a draw, Shailene Woodley, and Sam Claflin as well. So I think this one could, open in the 5 to 10 million range. But I could be wrong, like I did for Solo, right? I thought the Solo could open, 200 million plus, but hey, I was way wrong, half that maybe. So 5 to 10 for Adrift. But I wouldn't be surprised if it makes more, because hey, The Fault in Our Stars did really well. It's based on a book. This one is based on true events. But going by my gut feeling, 5 to 10 for Adrift. All right, so kind of a quickie one for this weekend. Tune in next week to see how I did. Until then, bye bye.